The one-act zombie dramedy, The Dog Doesn't Die, has arrived at the Planet Ant Black Box. And today we're chatting with Ariel Everitt and Josh Prim about this production. Thank you two for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having
Thank you
us.
so much for having us.
So you just had your opening weekend for this show. And Josh, how has that been, getting to finally share it with the world?
It's been fantastic. It's been very, very nice doing it in rehearsal, but finally having an audience to have the energy of and stuff, being able to play off them and, see where our jokes are landing and and stuff.
Ariel, for you, this is kind of, and we're going to talk a little bit about this in a little bit, but this is like you're a writer, director. Like, what is it like to finally see this product you've been spending so much time with finally kind of arrive?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's been incredible. And I think along the process of like this going from a script to an actual like live stage production, there's multiple points where you're like, shit, this is getting real, really real right now. And then that just like keeps happening until it's completely real. And you're like, wow, okay. I don't know why I didn't ever really picture what it would feel like when this all came to fruition, sort of like it's much more real feeling than anything you could imagine, right? And in terms of like opening weekends, I mean, it's just been incredible to see the actors. Like, I mean, they've done such incredible work throughout rehearsal and everything, but the way they just locked in. And I feel like once we started our show run, just seeing them lock into the characters, physically embody the characters, how deep they've gotten into the characters since we opened, has just been like incredible and appalling. And getting to see folks in the audience react to it and laugh and gasp and stuff has been just delightful.
I could imagine it's like just such a surreal moment to kind of sit back and see this finally. Like, oh, audiences are reacting to it and people get to see the characters that I spent so much time with and that, these actors have embodied.
Exactly. And it's like this isn't just in my head anymore. This isn't just in my head or their heads or yeah, this is a thing. Yeah, very surreal.
So what's going on in this show, The Dog Doesn't Die, Ariel?
Yeah. So this show was vaguely inspired by kind of I Am Legend, the film, where there's a zombie apocalypse, there's a guy and his dog. And I was just thinking about that movie, which, spoiler alert, is very traumatic in certain ways that we don't necessarily have to refer to. You might be able to guess what they are. But anyways, kind of the idea came to me like, what if we found a way to really redeem and subvert some of the tropes that I think that movie really that movie did well and was very impactful. But it's sort of the concept of like those characters that we let die in movies so much have to die, got to live full lives and actually be like fully realized, right? And
For
I
sure.
just think that dog characters deserve some of that. So, our dog character in The Dog Doesn't Die is very fun, silly, optimistic. The human character is very pessimistic, jaded. He's been in the zombie apocalypse. Is very lonely. Um, but then there's also an element of interacting with real people, and there's the trope in so much zombie media that other humans are the enemy, right? And other humans are worse than the zombies. They're so bad. But what if it didn't have to be like that? What if other humans wanted to help each other and connect with each other because they're lonely too in this zombie apocalypse? So it's about the main character Will and his dog named Dog getting trapped in a house surrounded by zombies. Um, and there happens to be another survivor locked in there with them, and they have to learn to cohabitate while Will faces his past and learns how to forgive himself, maybe.
There's a lot of going on here with like a lot of different themes and stuff like that, but also playing with those tropes, like you said, that are so common in like zombie apocalypse movies.
Yeah. It's been delightful to balance the just abundance of tropes with at the heart of this, there's so much sincerity and discomfort of like being a flawed human. how do we use those tropes and that humor to like stomach how sincere this is?
For sure. Josh, what kind of drew you to wanting to be a part of this production?
Yeah, I am a big zombie fan. I watched a lot of The Walking Dead with my family. And I played like all the Telltale games as well growing up. And
Sure.
I had previously auditioned for a separate play that the farm team had done, and they had told me to come back and audition again. I was like, sure, why not? Always love an opportunity to do a show. And when I went through the cold reads and through the audition, I really loved the character of Will. All of the stuff they had for him was so enticing and just spoke to me a lot as well. Felt very personal. Um, and just from there, I was like, wow, this is something that I really want to do.
For sure. So you mentioned that you're playing Will. Who is Will to you? Like, who is Will? Like, what is your kind of take on this character?
Yeah, Will is very tortured throughout this show. He's got a lot on his shoulders throughout a good chunk of the play. Um they're 4 years into the apocalypse at this point, and he has gone through a lot of hurt and different trauma with different people in his past. But he's also very creative and a very, very creative character. He's a poet. He And a lot of that gets kind of swept to the side because they don't really live in a world where that is able to flourish and stuff.
Okay.
He has to kind of present as a kind of hard character, but underneath the surface, there's a lot of joy and stuff in there, even if he won't admit it to Dog or to other characters in the show.
For sure. And so how do you begin developing this character? Like, what's your process for developing a character from what you kind of see on the script?
Yeah, for me, for me, my process is very hands-on. I just love being in the space, and being in space is very helpful just to feel things out and feel how this character would go about, like just sweeping through a room, the things that they would check first and stuff like that. I watched a little bit of The Walking Dead as well to just go through how a survivor would go through like in this world. Um, but I very much need to I don't feel super in character until like very, very close to the to opening, to when
Sure.
have the lines memorized and am able to really have some runs under my belt of just going through the journey and the flow of the script, being able to really hammer down the moments where I need to implement some transference of my own emotions and stuff into this character and stuff. It's very much a journey. I really like being able to discover the character along the process.
For sure. Absolutely. So Ariel, you kind of talked about your inspiration for the show, but like, how do you, like, what was kind of your writing process? Like, how did you begin to develop the show into The Dog Doesn't Die?
Yeah. This was actually something. So I have a background like I was a creative writing major in college and stuff like that. So I wrote a lot of short stories, and short stories were my big thing for a long time. I'm gonna give you my whole life story because why not? I'm gonna
Please.
condense it down. Uh, um,
I appreciate things like that.
Thank you. Yeah, going from being a creative writing major into being an adult was a difficult process, and an especially difficult process because the first semester of my senior year of college, I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had to take a semester off, got right back into it, and my graduation was in spring of 2020, which ended up, of
Oh,
course, getting interrupted by
yeah,
a global pandemic. Um, so I think adulthood hit me especially hard then. I was dealing with a lot of brain fog from chemo and things like that, and just the difficulty of like, oh, I have to have a full-time job to make ends meet. I have to find a new way to be creative, but I don't know what that looks like. And I struggled with that for a ton of years. And how I actually ended up getting back into being just creative at all, because I wasn't able to write, and that was my whole identity for several years. A couple of years ago, I started going to some stand-up shows, just around Ann Arbor, just for fun. And then I would be driving home and I'd be like, "Oh, I just thought of a joke. I haven't thought of an idea for anything
Sure.
original in literal years." So just the something about comedy and things being silly helped me reconnect with that part of myself. And so now I've taken stand-up classes, I've taken improv classes, I've taken sketch writing classes, and just the unseriousness just let me play. And I think that was how I really got back into being creative, which is way out of the scope of the question you asked originally, of course. But I feel it's important. And it's
You're setting
also,
the scene.
thank you. And it also reflects Will's journey too, because yeah, of course his creative journey is interrupted by the zombie apocalypse, by 4 years of the zombie apocalypse, which is close to the amount of years that I wasn't doing anything creative. Um, so yeah, I mean, definitely that element of rediscovering creativity has been very important to me. For this play in particular, how it sort of started was I auditioned to be part of the Planet Ant Farm team, which is a residency program where we rotate through the different roles in producing a play. So, being stage manager, being a marketer, being writer director, being a producer, all of those. There's 6 of us, and it's a year-long program, so that's what we're doing. I, of course, was very excited for the writer-director part since my background is in writing. And I'm like,
Sure.
I think having this deadline and just other people being accountable to them to produce a product will be really good for me. And it really was, because I ended up going second in the year. So I had a very quick turnaround for a script. Of course, I poured all the time I could into it, but there was an element of I have to have something to people by this point. And it was so freeing, because I have always been very much a perfectionist, where I'm like, I nothing I've ever written have I ever felt like it was done. That was a
Sure.
huge thing I struggled with as a creative writing major, because like when it came time to, like, my teachers would be like, "Have you submitted any of your stories to literary magazines?" I'd be like, "No, they're not done." And
Sure.
because they'll never be done. So having something where it's like, well, actors are going to get this, they're going to put it on, so it's going to be done, it's going to be done. uh
Sure.
that really helped me with that, and to just accept, like, this was the best I could do in this period of time, and help separate that, like, your work is not you, but it can be an important expression of you. So that's been a big part of my process throughout all of this. I also had some amazing help from our coach Michael Dupree on the Planet Ant Farm team. But I also, another big part of the process was just reading plays, and I like some plays with some elements of philosophy, like No Exit, things like that. So just, yeah, just playing and having fun was the main thing.
So then how did you what was like to then transfer that to being the director of it as well? Because now you're taking it from that story that's on the page to seeing a vision that's on the stage.
Yeah. For me, for me being a director, and this is my first time directing a play. For me, this has been a very collaborative process, and that's what I wanted it to be from the beginning. Is I wanted to help my cast get into characters. These characters, I wanted to help them understand the motivations of these characters, ask questions about, like, how would this person walk and move and be in this world, and get to a point where the cast knows these characters so well that they are active participants in creating this, which
Sure.
has been by far like my favorite part of directing, is seeing what my cast members bring to me about these characters. Josh has been really great at this, being like, oh, do you think that Will would do this? What does Will mean when he says this? Those kind of questions have been awesome, and just the suggestions that people bring have been so fun. But it was really important to me throughout this whole process to really center, like, we're human beings, and that comes first. And when we come together and we're doing work, it's so easy to get into that mindset, that like survival mode of like, we got to get this thing going and stuff like that. And I'm like,
Sure.
there are no real negative consequences, that could come from this play, barring a ridiculous, coincidence or anything. Uh, but I just, yeah, I tried to start every rehearsal with a check-in, just talking about being human, just trying to really connect on that level and make sure everybody has what they need. Um, so yeah, it's been an incredible experience. It's been wonderful.
You could truly tell the passion that you have for this project, and that's so cool because you're seeing it on all different fronts. You get to see it as like a writer and also as a director, and seeing the people kind of take those pieces, and it sounds like you really have a collaborative approach on how to build the story.
100%. I've loved the suggestions that folks have come to me with, and the times I've been able to be like, yes, that's awesome. Let's do that. It's been delightful.
Josh, what has maybe been like the biggest challenge, or how the show has challenged you as an actor to grow in your craft?
Yeah. There's a lot of very emotional moments throughout the show. And Will as a character is feels so personal to me, and so many of the challenges that he's gone through is stuff that I deal with in my own life. And so going through Will's journey kind of every night has been a very cathartic experience, but also a little challenging to kind of
Sure.
step into that shame that he feels for a lot of the decisions that he makes throughout the show. Um, Coming to terms with that, and using my own personal experience makes it a very heavy show to do. But at the very end, there's a lot of catharsis, that Will goes through throughout the show. Um, that makes it makes the journey very much worth it.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, like, again, you're getting for you to also be able to kind of have a little bit of emotional catharsis as you're journeying
Hmm.
as Will through the show.
Hmm. And he talks so much throughout the show and yells a lot. So very much part of it has been like, oh, I gotta make sure that my throat stays okay.
I can imagine you're like, especially this is a one act play too.
Hmm.
That probably changes the pace a little bit of like how you're preparing to go from start to finish.
Yeah. So often I like how I learn my lines is like trying to make sure I understand the flow of the show. And when you only have like a couple scenes to memorize, it makes it so much easier knowing when to come in and stuff. But when you're on stage like the whole time, and with so many lines to memorize and stuff, it makes it a little bit of a challenge, but absolutely worth it, and something that we were all able to to do very well.
For sure. Absolutely. Ariel, how about for you? Do you feel like this show has challenged you in a specific way to grow in like your role as a director or a writer? Or do you feel like there's this part of this that was challenging or even had to be adapted almost as you went from screenplay to stage?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I will say, yeah, definitely in terms of being challenging is just the one act format in general. And there were
Sure.
there were so many things I wanted to do with this play when I started out and I set out, that it just couldn't end up working within this small format, within the wide scope of the story I wanted to tell within this. Because I think some of my favorite plays are you're in one setting, like No Exit, like I mentioned already. You're in this one setting and so much happens and you feel very transformed by the end, but the setting is still the same. We've been in basically real time with these characters, and so that's what I wanted to do with The Dog Doesn't Die, was in
Sure.
the zombie apocalypse this ravaged house to experience that in real time with our characters. That is not at all where we ended up, and we ended up bouncing back and forth a little bit to be able to tell the full story. Um, but I think something that's important about this play also is that for me, what felt really important to me about writing this was I I've lived with a lot of shame for a long time about how I acted in a relationship, a really important relationship I had when I was young, from the end of high school through the end of college, and the process of learning to forgive myself is something that has been so difficult for me throughout the years. So
Sure.
yeah, and as a writer, like I in the past have often dealt with issues that nag at me by writing about them, and seeing my character behave in ways that I did, treating a partner in not necessarily the kindest way, and then going along with that same journey with him, both helped me come to a place where I feel I can forgive myself better because I can forgive Will for his mistakes, and has been obviously emotionally challenging to watch and uh to really, I mean, watching it play out, you really physically feel like the human impacts of those kinds of behaviors. So
Sure.
on an emotional level, level it's been challenging,
I can
but very,
imagine.
very cathartic. Yeah.
So then one final question for both of you, and Josh, I'll start with you. Is just what are you hoping audiences take away from this production of The Dog Doesn't Die?
Yeah, I really hope that the audience is able to take away just being able to one go through that process of forgiveness for yourself, and learn to really take things in your past and be able to make peace with them, and to kind of learn the importance of human of being able to connect with each other and stuff. It's something that I feel is very strong throughout the show, and something that we are starting to lack a lot of, and becoming a lot harder, through the years. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, absolutely. Because I mean, especially, you kind of mentioned about the pandemic and stuff like that. That was such an
Hmm.
isolated time, and people really have not always come back from that. So you're right. Like
Hmm.
connection is important, and having a community is important in that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
How about for you? What are you hoping audiences take away from this production?
Number one, we've been talking very seriously about this, but number one, poop jokes can be funny. That's pretty much the most
Always.
important thing. So, yeah,
Always, 1,000%.
never be
Farts are always funny too, right?
exactly. Never be too highbrow for a good poop joke. Um,
Correct.
but number two, I I mean, over time, it's been such an important lesson for me to learn that my relationship to having relationships with other people is one of a lot of respect for another person's autonomy, and I didn't always have that respect. So I'm not. This play isn't trying to preach or anything like that. It's just showing the story of Will as he comes to a similar place. But it's also, a story about of characters really connecting and just yeah, just learning how to how they want to be in relationship to others, which I think is always a good question to ask yourself. And we're not trying to present an answer, just the question of how do you want to be in relationship to others. And so that's the second thing I think I would want people to take away.
Perfect. Thank you so much, you two, for being here today and talking with me about this production. And we are just so excited for people to go and see this. But thank you for being here.
Thank you
Thank you.
so
This was
much.
incredible.
So The Dog Doesn't Die runs the Planet Ant Black Box through March 28th. So get your tickets now and we'll see you at the show.
Thank you so much.